Hi everyone. So thanks very much for having us. Thank you for this introduction. Yeah, it's great having this platform and to discuss this project, and I think it's a very timely topic. We will start the discussion by a presentation. So the discussion actually will be after the presentation. Marcel Rickli will do a presentation with images. I guess that most people are not able to see the exhibition in these times. So I'd like to hand the word over to Marcel, if you want to give us the presentation. It will take around 20-25 minutes. After the presentation, we will have another 20 minutes to discuss it between Marcel and me. And you are very welcome and invited to hand in your questions. So at the very end, there will be a Q&A. We will have another maybe 10 minutes. And yeah, I will pick your questions and would love if you get involved. So, Marcel.
Thanks, Sasha. Thanks for the introduction, Michael. And yes, also big thanks for giving me this opportunity to speak today and also to show my work in Belfast. I'm actually quite curious to see first picture. Unfortunately, I cannot be there. Yeah, it was actually planned that I can visit, but still with the quarantine regulation, it's not going to be possible. So yeah, I hope I see pictures soon of the show. Yes, tonight I'm going to talk about my project, which is called Theeon, and it's a project about radioactive waste, how to store them, and especially like how to communicate the danger to future civilizations. For those that are not maybe familiar with this topic, I'm going to explain it a little bit further, because like radioactive waste, especially those produced in nuclear power plants, like the spent fuel, is considered to be the most dangerous material on Earth, basically. So it is posing a threat for about 100,000 up to 1 million years to come. And this raises also some questions like, how can you actually store this, like in a technical way? Like, how can you bury this, this waste securely? And how do you communicate what is actually buried there, or like what is in that kind of repositories? How do you communicate this to future civilizations? And this is, to me, maybe the most interesting part I was working on that project. So that's why we actually choose to talk about more on that topic. Yeah. So actually, yeah, how do we warn future generations? There were some ideas back in the 80s where I like from the Sandia report, for example. It's a report that was done by the US National Energy Department in 1994. And there were already some concepts like how actually you can make this be possible, like how can you actually mark them, or like some initial ideas. And a recent one is the Arcane report that is released from 2019. And this is the latest one. And so I might, if you want to read this message first, so you have a little bit more insight what is actually was inspiring me. So when I first came across this message, I thought, okay, this is actually this topic has a huge potential to work on. So especially the sentence here, we considered ourselves to be a powerful culture. That means, okay, we are expecting future civilization to not having any idea anymore for what might buried underneath, or like what might buried in this kind of repositories. So, and I first read that text, yeah, that was like this kind of the starting point for this project. This text you can find in the Sandia report, and it was like, how can I say, it was the idea that you can place a message in the entrance of a repository that you yeah, that people might understand, or like to how can I say, that they not try to get in this repository. Those are like the covers of these two documents I'm talking about. Yeah, the left-hand side is the Sandia report from 1993 and the Arcane report from 2019. So most of my concepts, or like the ideas I had in my project, were based on the Sandia report, because when I started that project in 2018, it was the only one available for public, and only, yeah, so that is like those kind of proposals were my inspiration for this work. For example, what you see here is the marker typology, as I call it, and this is inspired by the spike field. That is also an initial idea from the Sandia report, and the concept, or like the idea of that concept, was to place like huge structures or some yeah, like elements that should prevent people from entering that space. So the idea was like to create something that is giving the intruder, or like the people that are entering that place an unpleasant feeling, so that you would say, okay, this is something that is disturbing me, or like this, I don't feel comfortable here, so I should leave that place as soon as possible. So that was basically the idea back in the days, to warn the people, and yeah, to make them like not to intrude what is might be underneath. And the concept of the marking is still present today, or like it's still considered to be important, because you need to know, like if you like actually in the Swiss regulatory for nuclear waste disposal, it is actually mandatory that we mark future nuclear waste repositories, so that the people in the future might have a feeling, or like understanding what is there. And for example, this picture was taken in Finland during my last trip, when I visited their first nuclear waste repository there. It's called the Oncolo, and their idea is actually not to mark what is to mark the site, because they say if it's once it's forgotten, no one will care, and no one will have like the idea to start drilling, or like to start looking for it. So like their idea is like to make this place forgotten. And I found this image, like this relic, that's how I call it, on top of that repository, and somehow it's against their idea not to mark it. If you think it, like you already put some signs on that site already, so this, in a way, I think they already marked it, or like they put attention for like people that are going there, and said, okay, there was something man-made, it's obviously man-made, and this can raise the attention to investigate further. Also, yeah, like how do you create symbols that could last for a very long time is a very essential question, right? Yeah, for like this topic. Like if you see we might be all familiar with this symbol. It's the radioactive symbol for radiation. And yeah, like in the Western world, we have an understanding of that. Like we all know what this symbol is about, because we are maybe we saw that in the television or like on documentaries about Chernobyl and what else. But it's not really, it doesn't mean that like other cultures, for example, do understand what this symbol is means actually. For example, there was an incident in Thailand on a scrapyard where there was a radiation device used in a hospital. It was just like placed there, and some workers were like taking it apart because they didn't know what it is, but the symbol was actually attached to it, but they didn't understand the meaning of that symbol. So then 3 people died as a fact of that accident. And so this is why I think it's not what we consider to be very clear as a symbol. It might not be valid for other cultures, for example. Also, this one is also an idea that was placed in this Sandia report, like how can you make people aware from the danger. So you see here like this can, and then you open it, and then you feel ill, basically. But for other cultures, they might read from the top from the bottom to the top. It might have a different outcome. No? So this is like also something that it shows it's very difficult to create science. And also like just only the skull and crossbone, for example, if you ask like the younger generations, like maybe an 8-year-old child, for this kid, this symbol is not about danger, it's about pirates, for example. So it can also change during time, like the meaning of a symbol. Yeah, this is called the Raycat. It's from my project, and this is maybe the most interesting thing, or like, how can I say, this was also like an idea basically in the early 80s, where a French author and the Italian semiotician were thinking about, okay, how can you actually make sure that an information can go into the future. And so like, how can you store information? And they came up with the idea to genetically modify the DNA of a cat in order to act as a living radioactive detector, or like a radiation detector. And it's absurd if you think, okay, you can store, or like it's absurd that you came up with the idea to store information to the DNA of a living being. But back then there was like on the height of or like for the discovery of this DNA modification, and they thought, okay, could be the solution. It's always like that. They're like the latest technical achievements are always important, or like an influencing factor, especially in that topic as well, about nuclear waste, because we don't have a solution right now. So this is the atomic flower. It's like basically the same concept. So to genetically modify flowers that they would only grow if there is a leaking radioactive repository, or like, yeah. This is also a concept inspired by the Sandia report. When you're thinking about like what might last forever is like emotions, for example. Like the language can change. It's not I mean, like it's almost impossible that in 10,000 years, for example, that the spoken language is like still the same, or like it's definitely sure that it will evolve during that time, or like it might be misunderstood. But emotions could act as or like they might be still able to read. So that's what they are, why they came up with this idea to mark a repository with like faces, for example, that show like unease, or yeah, like to warn also intruders, like if they see it, it's like, okay, this is definitely something that means it's not good to be here, for example. An important fact is also like to how can I say, like to keep the memory about those places. Where do you yeah, like for example, this is this images are taken in the Herd Deep. It was taken on the island of Alderney, and Herd Deep was a acknowledged place for disposing nuclear waste until the 90s and something. And you don't see it where it is, like, but there are records of that. There were records of where they actually dumped that barrels filled with nuclear waste, but it's not really necessary that they are still like how can I say, like that it's very accurate, because back then they have like they put those barrels onto the ships, and the crew had some dosimeters, for example, and when they reached a certain level of radiation, they gave like a warning signal, and then they had to dump this waste immediately. So it doesn't mean that they're actually reach that areas where they were supposed to dispose. And this is also for me like an example. It's like it doesn't really mean that even though we have like records about the disposal sites, it doesn't mean that we are still able to find them, or like they are very accurate. This is an image taken in Czech Republic. It shows the entrance to a nuclear waste repository. Yeah, maybe we just only find that, but if you see it, something similar to this, it might raise attention, for example, like that you want to know what it is inside. Or this is the Oncolo repository I was talking about, like just to show this is the facility that has to be marked for this very long time. And this is also a concept inspired by the Sandia report. It's like a sort of a time capsule. The idea of that concept was to build like a shelter, for example, that is buried close to a repository, and it contains all the information that are necessary for yeah, that the people have a understanding of what is buried there. So yeah, I would like to hand over to Sasha again, so we can have like a discussion on that, yeah, and like the talk. So.
Yeah, thank you, Marcel. Thanks for these insights. Yeah, let's go down the rabbit hole. I have some questions for you. As I mentioned at the very beginning, I think it's a very timely topic that you touch upon with this work. Several governments are turning their back on dirty energy, like on coal, on oil, and also on nuclear energy. So there's a high momentum, especially now in these times. Yeah, because nuclear waste, it stays forever. At least in human terms, it stays for 100,000s of years.
Yes.
So there's this question how to handle these dangerous nuclear waste that will pose a danger to the body, to the body of civilizations in a very distant future. So authorities and governments are obliged to develop strategies and take action on how to handle nuclear waste and in order to protect people from the dangers. So on the one hand, I see your work as an inventory of the state of things, an inventory of what governments nowadays are doing. You visited, so you didn't speak much in your presentation about this part of the work, the documentary part of the work, because you traveled to, for example, laboratories, rock laboratories in Switzerland, where scientists do research on how to contain radioactive waste. You traveled to Finland, to the Czech Republic. We saw 2 images. So there's this documentary part where you travel to these sites. To be honest, there are not many repositories that are already working. I think there are 2 or 3. There's one in Czech Republic. There's the new one in Finland. But to be honest, we are at the very, very beginning. And we don't have solutions at hand. And we don't know how nuclear waste, how it behaves in these repositories. Besides that, there's another layer. I'd say it's the atomic semiotics. It's what you have been talking about. It's how we can warn future civilizations of getting near these repositories. And there it becomes very philosophical. It becomes a question about how to transfer, how to pass on meaning over very extended periods of time. And just consider this, how far does recorded history date back? Actually, it dates back maybe 5,000 or 6,000 years to the old Egyptians or Sumerians. And consider that the modern Homo sapiens is 325,000 years old. So humans in the future will not be the same as they are today. So what can be the language? What can be the pictographs to warn, to communicate to these people that there is a danger, that there are these repositories and that they should keep away. And you took as a starting point the Sandia report. So that's a paper by scientists and by authorities as well. And they had very fancy ideas, very speculative ideas. We have seen these cats, these Raycats. We have seen these spike fields. So they tried to develop some kind of imagery future civilizations would be able to understand.
Yeah.
So now, my first question, because the project started off as a documentary one, and in your previous projects, you basically you researched a project, you went there and you took the images. But this project is very different. It's also very, very artistic. It's much about interpretation. It's not only photography. You also used rendering, digital renderings, etc., etc. At what point did you realize that just going there and taking pictures is not enough?
Yeah, I think like also like this was the Sandia report, like they're giving me those ideas because like there were this like ideas about the markers, but they are not existing. But somehow I think they are very important as well to include in the project. So then I decided, okay, how can I achieve this, or how can I make it possible to show this part as well? And so I decided to to play with 3D rendering, for examples. And also I think it's interesting to me to use this kind of techniques. Like I used a lot with 3D printings and 3D renderings. And to me, it shows like also what what this like, how can I say, like what I was mentioned earlier, like it's always on the top of the technical achievements. And so in that sense, when you think like 3D printing is considered to be the next industrial revolution, I thought, okay, maybe I can play with it, not as a solution, but maybe as a tool to create this imagery on that topic. So that when I came up, okay, I want to play with that because it's the latest method that is like, yeah, that could work as well, like, for that.
There are some interesting transformations of ideas, how you achieved to create an image out of an idea. And let's take an example. You have been talking about the pictograph for radiation.
Yeah.
So that's just, it's a pictograph, it's an existing pictograph, but how to turn it into a photography and incorporate it into your project. Mm-hmm. Yeah, once again, you don't go there with your camera.
Yeah.
You choose a very different process to create that image.
Somehow I went there with the camera, but with like some steps before. Like, yeah, there's that image. Maybe I can go back again if you still see, right? Yeah, we're talking about this image. Like when to me, it was like I wanted to play with this symbol in a way, and I wanted to include that symbol as well in the work. But to me, it was like too obvious just to use it as a pictograph or as a logo, and then I was like playing around, and so this is the source of that image was actually like, how do you create the radiation symbol? This is very clearly marked in the ISO standard regulations. Like they're like also used for other symbols and signs. And so I was playing with that also in the 3D. So at first I put it in the 3D software and I modeled it as a model. And then I printed out this sort of a door code. Yeah, I mean, some people say it looks like a door, but it's actually just a plate with this. Yeah, it's a 3D printed piece. And then I brought it back with photography when I was like taking a studio image of that symbol. So that meant for me, I was really playing around with this symbol, or like I was trying to play with it, or like to see, okay, how do you create something like that? And yeah, like, and still like I was using this latest technique with the 3D printing. And to me, it was like more or less like a playing around with that symbol.
So you used your home 3D printer to create an object, right? A small object, 20 centimeters, maybe?
Yeah, maybe like that, like this. But then it was like in the previous exhibition, we mounted it in as a 2.5 meter wall piece, and then you can really see the structure, and then you can really dive into the symbol. So yeah, I think it was just like a playing around with new techniques.
We haven't been mentioning this. Actually, it's a very spatial experience, very physical experience when you enter this exhibition. So there's the pictograph, which is like 2.50 meters. And you also, you built these spikes. You built a spike field with an interactive kind of piece, right?
Yeah.
Interactive too, so when people would come close to it, it would react in some way.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Can you give us insight maybe into how did the work that at the very beginning was purely photographic, how did it develop into a very claustrophobic experience for visitors?
I think the whole topic is about emotion So like to create a specific kind of feeling that was yeah, that was the main goal. Like, or like I only knew, okay, this can only be like as touching as for a visitor if you have like this specific feeling when you enter that place, and then you see like this spike field, and then you have like, okay, what is it, what is here? But it also like it shows like the people are interested in that, and they moved closer, and this shows also how hard it actually is to place a marker that is in a way how can I say, like it marks that there is a repository that keeps intruders away and doesn't act as something that or like to motivate people to investigate or like to see what is buried underneath. For example, like the pyramids, like I don't know if they are meant to be open, surely not, but the people were doing this. So yeah, that's why I think emotion is still is is an important part for that project, or like the feeling it creates, not only the images. So I think it still works better as an exhibition as just like seeing images on the screen.
Yeah, in case of the pyramids, people were attracted to them because they were so monumental. So it's really hard to create some kind of symbols which deter people, actually.
Yeah.
And so if I understand you correctly, you wanted to make visitors react emotionally to the environment, to the artwork, by being scared off, right? So by somehow, or at least feel some kind of irritation when they would enter the space.
Yeah.
Mm.
Not specifically to scare people. Like for example, in this Sunday report, it was like all about warning people or like to scare. And if you read the latest piece, like this Arcane report I was talking about, this on the right hand side, it's not about making people scared anymore. It's about giving information in the first sense, like to inform people what is there, still to market, but not like with those kind of markers anymore. That concept is like outdated. You won't place like these huge sculptures because you know you would attract people to yeah to disturb that place. So they finally dumped that idea, and I think it's okay. But for me, it was still good. Like for as an artistic piece, it was important to have like there's something that people can remember. It's like it's marked, and so I think for that, in the exhibition sense, it was really important to have them to create this feeling.
Yeah, it's a very ambitious project because you want people to make like to feel emotions, visitors nowadays, but also visitors in 100,000 years. So it's really a research into what endures. How can you create images that not that endure, and not only for a couple of years or for just a body of work, but for almost eternity.
Yeah, it was like just like to say like how it changed as well. Like for example, the Raycat, for example, back in the days it was like an absurd idea, but if you think it right now, like during this time, it might be not that impossible to create something like that. If just like as an example, the latest vaccines for the pandemic, against the pandemic, were made by this CRISPR method or something like that, that makes it easier to modify DNA. I don't know, I'm not a scientist in that sense, but maybe it might be even more possible to create something like that. And this cat, for example, is still taken into consideration in the latest Arcane report, but not as a radiation detector. It's more like the myth it creates. Somehow, like this is very specific for that topic. Like the Raycat, for example, there are already songs existing about that, or like it was like some inspiration to artists. And I think that is the interesting part, or like that was also described in the latest Arcane report. That's what it does to the socio culture, like that people are remembering that idea, and like there can make the link, okay, this is something about nuclear waste repositories. And in a way, so that in that sense, this idea already had a success now.
Yeah, in that case, it's not scripture, it's not language, it's in the DNA. The warning sign is in the DNA. Very basic concept. I want to touch on another aspect. Nuclear waste and energy is a very politicized and controversial topic. Have you, in your process and research, have you been like affected by that? So there's a question of access. You needed to get access to these repositories, to these rock laboratories. And there's also the question, where do you situate yourself as an artist in that?
Yeah, of course, it's a political topic, but it's not something that you can hide, because like you still, especially in Switzerland, you still need the agreement of the people. Like if you decide to build a nuclear waste repository in close to Zurich, for example, you need the permission of the people as well. And so you cannot, if you try to hide or like to make access impossible, you would never get that permission, or like it's harder to get that. So because basically it was like that in the beginning, but then they realized, okay, we're not getting any further with this attitude. And so they changed, especially in Switzerland, they changed to be more open to it, or like to talk about that. And so for me, in a way, like I was lucky to get that access, or like I think it's not that impossible. It was actually very easy just to ask the agency there, which is responsible for disposing nuclear waste, and then I talked about that concept, and then they say, okay, you can have access to the laboratories. And in Finland it was the same, but they have like some regular days for media visits, and so I could only go there. But they are actually willing to communicate, but because if you try to hide, the people might get skeptical. So I think it makes sense to talk open about that.
So I think time is already over. Are there some questions? That's the chance to now to address them directly to Marcel. Maybe while we're waiting, what's your personal take on the success of the actions that governments are taking now? So there's this first repository in Finland for highly nuclear waste, which has recently started to function, right? Will it be successful? Will it be? Is there debate around this repository? Do we have the solutions at hand, or are we still clueless at the very beginning?
I mean, like if it's technical possible, is completely it's different. Or like I think technically it can be possible. Like when you talk with the geologists, they say, okay, this rock there is there for billions of years and it doesn't make much change. So I think in a technical way, it's possible, but it's still like the importance yeah, like the communication aspect, this is something that is still in question. There is no solution for that so far, like how to make sure that information will get into the future. And I think it's important, for example, I don't know, like in a few thousand years, maybe there might be a device that can easily detect, okay, there is something underneath. So like, let's see what is there. So I think that this raises questions. I don't think it's like impossible to do it like in a technical way. I think this could be done, but I'm not sure if it's good or like, yeah, in a way, maybe it will be good to create some, or like to build something that is possible to take the waste out again, or like easier out again.
Mm. Okay, let's close it there. Is there something that you'd like to add, Marcel?
Oh no, yeah, thanks, Sasha, thanks, Michael, and yeah, if anyone has like question, you can also write me email or just
how can they
personally.
get in touch? How can they get in touch with you? Maybe what's your website? What's your email?
We have a question here.
Okay, can you see Marcel?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
The question is from Gami. Is this project finished for you? If not, what is your next step or idea for this project? The project is still ongoing. Like the idea is to publish a book later, but I would love to add some other chapters. Like there's still something in mind that I will do something about this information transfer. For example, I ordered on eBay 150 old floppy disks, if you remember those. And the idea is like to get information out of that, just to see as an example how difficult it is to read information that is only like 30 years old, something like that. But it's only like a side project, but I'm still having like some ideas to proceed I'd like to continue that project.
But I think there's a book coming up soon, right?
I hope so, yes. It's like we're currently working on a book, yes, and yeah, but for that I would love to add some other chapters as well, like to make it more complete. The second question from Gami was, your project was influenced by the research in the Sandia and Arcane reports, but do you think would like your research to influence the next reports? I'm sure like it does influence my research a lot. Like this yeah, like it's not only like I take my inspiration out of that. It's also like there are a lot of books on that topic, or like if you just read some newspapers and stuff, I always get my inspiration from there. Or sometimes it can be even more banal. Like recently, I was like having a conversation with a friend, and then he told me about the a so-called menhir, like a memorial against a nuclear waste repository here somewhere in Switzerland. Then we decided to go there. So it's not. I can't say it's only. Yeah, like where I take my inspiration from can be very by accident also.
I think the question is also vice versa, pointing to if your work, your artistic experimental work is also inspiring scientists, like thinking about how to communicate, how to warn future civilizations. Are you in touch with scientists as well? Is there some kind of exchange?
And in that sense, no, but it's like it's oh, yeah. It's like in a way, like the artistic field is also considered to, or like it's more useful to create like the memory about that. For example, the more people are doing work on that, the more people are knowing about it. For example, if I talk to people like in the very beginning of that project, so most of the people weren't really aware what this means, like weren't aware about the danger of nuclear waste and that it lasts for so long. And always when I was talking to them, the answer was like, oh wow, I didn't know, this is so impossible, or like it's so hard to imagine that something is dangerous for 1 million years to come. And I think for that, art can make it easier to be remembered. As example, to me, that the Raycat is also art in a way, and people already remember that and taking the link to nuclear waste. So maybe, like, I wouldn't say it's the project can inspire next reports or something like that, but it might help to remember the topic itself.
Mm. Okay, so thank you very much, Marcel. Thanks very much to the audience. Unfortunately, we cannot see you. One got used to doing like talks, etc., on via Zoom during this pandemic, but for sure it feels much better if you are like in touch with the audience, and it's more inspiring and direct. But anyhow, I wish you a wonderful festival. Hope many of you can see the show. It's worth it. It's a very intriguing exhibition, I think. And yeah, enjoy your evening. Enjoy your Saturday evening. And goodbye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.